Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the DC show. This is T. McNeil. Today is Sunday. Let's talk some tech gaming news. So, guys, if you recall about the PlayStation Vita, back in 2015, Sony, what they decided to do was actually discontinue the physical games. And obviously, if you had a PlayStation Vita, you would know this information already. But now, fast forward right now to 2019, Sony's actually going to be discontinuing the PlayStation Vita, period. Okay. So if you guys have never owned one before, I don't think it really would be worth your time and money to invest in one now, especially considering the fact that it's been out for several years. Okay. But let's go into the information and we'll get you guys' thoughts and opinions. So it does say that you knew the PlayStation Vita was not fit for this world, and now it's official. Sony has discontinued the last two PlayStation Vita models. And furthermore, the move marks the last step of a long, gradual phase out that included a halt on first-party games in 2015 that I just mentioned, the discontinuation of physical games, and the end of the PlayStation Plus freebies. So again, if you guys had a PlayStation Vita, you already know this information. But for the ones who are big fans of the PlayStation Vita, this may or may not be devastating to you. And even you guys might have already known that this was going to come into fruition, especially for Sony, okay? It's one of those things, guys, to be honest with you, that Sony knew probably several years back, and that's the reason why they discontinued the games in the first place. The mobile gaming industry is a crowded market, okay? And the only reason why it's crowded, and it doesn't mean that every game maker in the industry right now has their hands in the mobile market. It's just the fact that you have top players like Apple and Samsung, okay, among the elite like Nintendo as well, that pretty much gave Sony a run for their money in the mobile gaming industry, okay? So Sony pretty much knew that, and it's one of those things where they just had to take their ball and run, take your loss, and go home, okay? Now, keep in mind about the fact that the Vita did have a long shelf life once again, but it didn't have a happy one. It did launch back in Japan in December of 2011, right when the phone and tablet gaming were taking off. Sony was trying to sell people on a dedicated handheld at a time when many could play good enough mobile games on devices they already own. So if you guys remember back in 2011, it was during the earlier years for Samsung and Apple, those chips and processors that they put in those phones back then were just good enough, as it mentioned in the article, or just fast enough to process those games. And PlayStation Vita was actually ahead of its time several years ago too, but it was enough still from the Sony's competitors in the mobile gaming industry, and to disrupt PlayStation's or I should say Sony PlayStation Vita's performance, okay, and its sales on top of that. Because if I recall, I really don't think that Sony sold a lot of these units in the first place, okay? So like I said, again, those processors was just good enough to play Angry Birds and play other mobile games like the racing games, Asphalt, things like that, where, like I said, it just didn't look good for Sony as far as their numbers were concerned. Now, on a further note, and while they were high quality titles like Severed, tepid sales led developers to shy away. Things only got worse when you included design complaints such as reliance on expensive proprietary memory cards and fierce competition from Nintendo. Now, just in case you guys are actually wondering if this is truly the end for Sony in the mobile gaming world, it does say that Sony doesn't plan a sequel to the Vita. That's no surprising at a time when mobile games are still growing and competition from Switch could hurt a new entrant's chances, okay? So let's just chop it up for Nintendo and give them the W, or the win for that matter, in this mobile category. The thing is, the Nintendo Switch is what they call a hybrid console, okay? So it could be played on a 1080p/4K television in your living room, and when you want to go on the go, all you got to do is take the screen out of the docking station, take your cords, accessories with you, and you're right out the door, and now you continue to play mobile. So Nintendo pretty much owns that category. And I don't think there's any way possible for Sony, even now in 2019, if they were to try to come back into the mobile gaming world, it wouldn't work, okay? So, you got to chop it up for Nintendo because they were just that much more creative and more innovative when it comes to that space. And like I said, a new entrant coming in wouldn't stand a chance because it's too technologically advanced, especially for Nintendo. Now, Sony in this space really don't have to worry about too much. And I say that because it does say that the PlayStation 4 sales have usually been strong enough to sustain Sony's fortunes. And the company's future may hinge increasingly on the PlayStation Now and other cloud services that aren't tied to a single device. So in a nutshell, they're doing the exact same thing that Microsoft's doing with the next gen, and they're going to be relying on that cloud-based gaming and services as well. Okay, that's a huge moneymaker. Services like PlayStation Now, services like PlayStation Plus, and also Xbox Live. Okay, you got to understand that there's millions of people that subscribe to these services, and that's really where the money is. Okay, thus probably the reason why you get a lot of games that aren't finished when they're released. Okay, meaning they're probably about 60 to 70% complete, and then the other 30% is obviously in DLC. Okay, so like I said, this is how the gaming industry makes their money. And like I said, Microsoft's going to be following suit, especially with their next gen consoles coming up, where they're going to rely heavily on cloud-based gaming. And finally, it does say that, simply speaking, Sony doesn't have the handheld shaped hole in its lineup that it did several years ago. And really, at the end of the day, there's no need to. PlayStation 4 sales definitely peaked over 84 million worldwide and counting, because even though sales have slowed, the console is still the best seller, especially coming from this generation. Okay, it's already outsold the PlayStation 3 end over end. It has definitely outsold the PlayStation 1, and I think it's starting to close the gap on the PlayStation 2. Okay, so Sony has nothing to worry about. But you guys let me know how you feel about this information. I never owned a PlayStation Vita, so I can't speak too much on the handheld console from experience. But you guys, may have been big fans of the mobile console. And, what do you think about the discontinuation of the console? Okay, I mean, like I said, due to this information, Sony's pretty much out of the bag with this one, and there's no way. And I just don't see them trying to, come back into the mobile gaming world, simply because there's no money to be made. It's just too much competition out here, okay? Especially coming from Nintendo, who started out in the handheld industry, guys, 30 years ago with the original Game Boy, okay? So they are the king when it comes to mobile platforms, all right? But it is what it is, guys. And at the end of the day, PlayStation and Sony has to move on and continue to be profitable, okay? Also, make sure, guys, that you like and share this content. I would definitely appreciate that. Also, if you enjoyed the content, make sure that you hit the subscribe button. And finally, do not forget to tap the bell symbol so that you receive notifications when the DC show puts up new content. So I appreciate you watching and listening and tuning in. Until the next time, have a good one.